They say alone is how monsters are made. And you know what? They're absolutely right. But here's what they don't tell you. You get to choose what kind of monster you become. See, everybody's afraid of being alone. They're terrified of sitting with themselves, of facing their own thoughts, their own demons, their own potential. They'd rather drown in the noise of other people's opinions than listen to the voice that matters most, the one inside their own head. But here's the thing, alone is where legends are forged. Alone is where champions are born. Alone is where you discover who you really are. When nobody's watching, when nobody's cheering, when nobody gives a damn about your dreams except you. Every single person who ever achieved anything extraordinary spent countless hours alone. Alone with their craft, alone with their pain, alone with their vision that nobody else could see. You think Michael Jordan became Michael Jordan because he had cheerleaders at 5 a.m.? You think Kobe got his Mamba mentality from a support group? Hell no, they became monsters in the gym when the lights were off, when the crowd was gone, when it was just them against their own limitations. The crowd will cheer when you win, but they won't be there at 4 a.m. when you're grinding. They won't be there when you're studying while they're partying. They won't be there when you're building your discipline, one uncomfortable day at a time. That's when you realize alone isn't your enemy. Alone is your laboratory. Alone is where you experiment with becoming the person you're meant to be. But here's where it gets real. When you're alone, you meet all versions of yourself. You meet the quitter who wants to give up. You meet the victim who wants to blame everyone else. You meet the dreamer who talks but never acts. And you meet the coward who's afraid of their own potential. Most people run from this meeting. They turn on the TV, grab their phone, call a friend, anything to avoid confronting these internal demons. But champions sit down and have a conversation with every single one of them. They look at the quitter and say, I hear you, but we're not stopping today. They look at the victim and say, I understand you're hurt, but we're taking responsibility. They look at the dreamer and say, dreams without action are just fantasies. And they look at the coward and say, fear is information, not instruction. This is how you become a different kind of monster. Not the monster that destroys others, but the monster that destroys excuses. Not the monster that spreads darkness, but the monster that creates light through relentless effort. Alone is where your character gets tested. When nobody's watching, do you still do the work? When nobody's counting, do you still count your reps? When nobody's checking, do you still check yourself? This is where discipline becomes your religion. This is where consistency becomes your superpower. This is where you realize that motivation is garbage. It's discipline that builds monsters. You want to know what separates ordinary from extraordinary? It's what you do when you're alone. It's the extra hour you put in when everyone else is asleep. It's the book you read when everyone else is scrolling. It's the workout you complete when everyone else is making excuses. Pain plus reflection equals personal progress. Every uncomfortable moment alone is an investment in the person you're becoming. Every time you choose the hard path when nobody's watching, you're building the foundation of something unstoppable. When you're alone, you have two choices. You can listen to the voice that limits you, or you can become the voice that elevates you. Most people let their internal dialogue run wild. letting every negative thought rent space in their head for free. This is where discipline becomes your religion. This is where consistency becomes your superpower. This is where you realize that motivation is garbage. It's discipline that builds monsters. But monsters take control of the conversation. They become their own coach, their own motivator, their own accountability partner. They don't wait for someone else to believe in them. They become their own biggest believer. The relationship you have with yourself when you're alone determines every other relationship you'll ever have. If you can't respect yourself in solitude, you'll never command respect in a crowd. When you're alone, you have two choices. You can listen to the voice that limits you, or you can become the voice that elevates you. Most people let their internal dialogue run wild, letting every negative thought rent space in their head for free. This is where discipline becomes your religion. This is where consistency becomes your superpower. This is where you realize that motivation is garbage. It's discipline that builds monsters. But monsters take control of the conversation. They become their own coach, their own motivator, their own accountability partner. They don't wait for someone else to believe in them. They become their own biggest believer. The relationship you have with yourself when you're alone determines every other relationship you'll ever have. If you can't respect yourself in solitude, you'll never command respect in a crowd. So here's your choice. You can be afraid of being alone, or you can be excited about it. You can see it as isolation, or you can see it as incubation. You can view it as loneliness, or you can view it as leadership training. Because leaders spend a lot of time alone. They make decisions alone. They carry responsibility alone. They push forward when everyone else wants to quit. And they do it because they've learned to be comfortable with the monster they've become. The monster that doesn't need constant validation. The monster that doesn't need someone else to set their schedule. The monster that doesn't need permission to pursue their dreams. The monster that has learned to be their own source of motivation, their own source of strength, their own source of light. Alone is how monsters are made, but you get to choose what kind of monster you become. You can become the monster that destroys everything in its path, including itself. Or you can become the monster that destroys limitations, excuses, and mediocrity. You can become the monster that people fear, or the monster that people aspire to become. You can become the monster that spreads darkness, or the monster that illuminates possibility. The choice is yours. But remember this, every single day you spend alone is a choice. Every single moment of solitude is an investment. Every single hour of uncomfortable growth is building something that can't be taken away from you. So embrace the alone time. Welcome the solitude. Dance with the discomfort. Because on the other side of that alone time is a version of yourself that you never knew existed. A version that's stronger, smarter, more disciplined, more focused, and more unstoppable than you ever imagined. Alone is how monsters are made. The question isn't whether you'll spend time alone. The question is what kind of monster you'll choose to become when you do. The world is waiting for your transformation. But first, you've got to be willing to meet yourself in the darkness and decide who you want to be when the lights come back on. Your time is now. Your moment is here. Your monster is waiting to be born. What are you going to do about it?